Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to another edition of the World Show, Entrepreneurs, the Fiera Series. It is said, usually in praise of certain doctors, that they have a great bedside manner, and nobody makes fun of that anymore because we now realize how important that is. It reassures the patient and sets up all the procedures to follow. Well, some IT professionals, not many, but some, have a similar talent. They have a great computer side manner. You're mad as heck at your computer, but they simplify it for you. They untangle the knots. They make it seem all so simple. And occasionally they can even do that for an entire company and clean up the computer mess. And people are not angry anymore. Such is the case with our guest this week, Ralph Loewen, the founder of Itergy International, a key member of the global Microsoft family. He works closely with Microsoft for the benefit of Itergy. He's flying off one day to Australia, the next day to Latin America, and comes back to home base in Montreal. But what's interesting is the way he explains IT and makes it seem practically reassuring, even to an ignoramus like me. And most significantly of all, he's a man of faith, and maybe that explains the rest. Here's Ralph Loewen. Ralph Loewen, your company, as the expression goes, is going gangbusters, doing very well. We want to get into that, into your success, the secrets of it. Want to go backstage a little bit in the IT business, look at the wiring, how it all fits. But first, at least as fascinating as all that, it's something I read in the research that I hadn't expected, and I don't want to overlook it, and you've allowed me to talk about it. You were once a pastor for a number of years. How did that happen?
I was. Actually, I did my studies in theology, and I had come from an entrepreneurial background. My father was an entrepreneur. I kept dabbling in different projects, but the people side was of great interest to me, and so I did my studies in theology, and I pastored a church where I was the leader of the church for a period of 5 years.
What denomination?
Part of the Christian Missionary Alliance. So at that time, I took on, as a very young man, the role as being the leader of it. And actually, I think a lot of what I used back then, I really still use today. The primary part of the job is working with people, and the leadership skills, the coaching. So I think of it, when I think of competencies, I think a lot of whatever we do in life, the same skills move on, and a lot of what I got to use back then carried forward, as did the values that we've been able to bring forward into the company.
And it happens, I think, to everybody watching at one point or another, they discover that about somebody. These are major life changes, but people don't write them on their sweatshirt, you know, if they were once a rabbi or a pastor or a Catholic priest. But a lot of people out there were, and sometimes you find out about that. And I've noticed that in some cases, it seems to have unfolded very harmoniously. In other cases, to have been very wrenching. I think you fall in the first category. It seems to me to have been almost like a natural evolution.
Well, actually, it really was. For me, it was a way actually of almost becoming more effective in many things that I wanted to do, because the part that I really liked, because I think of it as a calling, okay? And so the part of it that I really liked to do, I couldn't express inside that context as well as I could if I moved into a business context. And so that actually was a large motivator for me to move out of being a pastor, and then later I'd been more of a trainer of different leaders, and actually moving into business. And you still get to take that with you. It's a part of who you are, and yes, it definitely remains core to everything you do.
You haven't turned your back on it, really.
I have not turned my back on it, absolutely not. My faith remains a key part of what keeps me motivated. For me, it's actually a key part even of the business, that not only that the business would reflect the values, but I actually perceive my work itself to be a part of my life's calling. That we're there to produce, to make better, to make the world a better place to be, and to become more efficient, and to produce. And to me, these are meaningful values that go just beyond trying to have an exit strategy one day.
And produce you have, indeed. Itergy is doing all kinds of things, but what exactly?
So that's a really good question. My wife, after 15 years, can't explain it. But no, we really take very complex technologies in the Microsoft space, and the key technology is Active Directory. And we've taken a complex technology like that. We've built out processes, procedures to manage it. Originally, we had to develop the KPIs, the SLAs, all the service level agreements around it. and then put the processes and procedures in place to operate it. And we actually do that for global customers 24/7 in 65 countries.
And one thing I didn't know until I read up on your company, but I'm worse than your wife, believe me, with this kind of stuff, is that you have a strong bond with Microsoft. You're a Microsoft partner, and it's been going on for many years. It's the equivalent of what I suppose what we would call an exclusive dealership in other areas of the economy. But where did that come from? Is that something that Microsoft wanted or you wanted?
For us, it was a choice we made that we were really going to build out around Microsoft technologies. A part of that was the background for both myself and my co-founder, Donald Bauer. We were both we came from a technical background. I was training people in these technologies, and he was actually working very large projects at that time with these technologies. And so for us, we just knew the technologies extremely well. So for us, that was natural then to partner up with Microsoft and to do this. What we don't do actually is resell any of their products. This is really about...
Yeah, it's not a dealership.
It's not a dealership, services
I'm
integrator.
just using that as an analogy.
Yeah.
But you are wedded to them as for
Very much so.
the programs that you
Yeah,
use.
very much so. So we have some key partnerships around it where we bring in technologies that make the Microsoft technologies work better. So they can't do everything. There's always a community, if you will, or a network of companies around it with supporting tool sets. And we develop expertise in those to help the companies to better manage their own networks.
And do you ever talk to Bill Gates? Because after all, you're one of their great partners, one of their great champions. You've won all these awards. Does Bill ever get on the phone to you?
That would be wonderful. We're one of those partners, I'll tell you a bit. We're one of those partners that's had a hard time getting some interest in, if you will, in the executive level, at the executive level at Microsoft, because the technology we work with is Active Directory, which actually is not licensed. Customers don't purchase it directly. They purchase it when they buy their servers and their desktops, and they inherit this license. And so there's, if you will, there's no revenue stream attached to the resale of what we do. However, this technology is so critical that the analysts at Gartner that specialize in identity and access will say that it's one of the primary problems facing the CIO today is making sure this technology is optimized properly so that business applications can be brought in efficiently and work the best way. So it's a very key technology. It's a mission critical technology, but it's not one that has necessarily gotten us in high up, but the value is recognized by the people out there that are working with customers who have to make this technology work to make everything else work.
And one of the things you market most intensely is the Active Directory. That's a great brand name, by the way. But I noticed reading up on it, it'll do anything and everything that you want it to in your company. Store, classify, delete, do everything. But you have to use it wisely and well. It has to be properly used.
Well, at the heart of it, it's become the primary LDAP security database, if you will. Every time you put a username in and a password in and you log in successfully, it gives you this digital key. That key gives you access or blocks access everywhere you go on the network. And so in almost all companies globally, this is a key tool for managing access or assets inside of their network. And it's become very, very key because it's your identity now. And so the whole field of identity management, this is a really critical technology. So so we've taken that technology and we really try and make sure that that's optimized and always available. And then on top of all of it, Microsoft built into that a lot of tools that can be used to, as you just said, to do change in configuration management on the network. We can apply policies that go across the company. And so the tool set has become mission critical on two sides. On one side on the infrastructure world, and the other side in the security world. So it has its foot in two different worlds. So it has an identity crisis on its own, but it's become an extremely mission critical tool today. And now as we're moving to the cloud, we have to find ways now to take this, and Microsoft is making steps, we're making steps to enable customers now to use that same identity when you log in and you've got your permissions, take that now and move it, give you access to the cloud without having to create new passwords and new accounts and memorizing all those things.
And I remember one time talking to one of your colleagues, not at Itergy, but in the industry, who was telling me, he was saying, Bob, you have no idea, when we go into some of these companies to service them, it looks like a teenager's bedroom. It's a mess. And it's such a huge mess, it'll take us months, even years sometimes, to clean it up before we can actually put in some services and put in some systems. So has that been your experience?
When you go into the customer sites, there's a lot of mess. Absolutely, that's a big driver. Actually, one of the things that's revealing the mess is actually as companies are trying to get to new technologies today, it's the cloud, and they're trying to get up there. And the very first thing that they're being told is, wait a second, you can't get there as long as this key technology is in the state that it's in. And so we actually end up doing a lot of, if you will, modernization of Active Directory, optimization of it, consolidations of it, trying to get it all set up properly so that if you're actually going to expose this to the internet and optimize it for the usage, it's a lot of work. So we do one of two things. So we can say to our customer, listen, this might cost you X million dollars to get it into the state where you need to go. Or on the other hand, if you need to get to that level, we can offer a managed service where we already function at that level, and we will bring it up and manage it for you at that level. And we work with our customers both ways.
Probably less expensive the second way.
Well, it becomes an operational expense for them as opposed to being a huge capital expense, and having to maintain expertise is a major problem for our customers. This is highly specialized, and it's very hard to maintain the level of expertise you need on an operational person for the 1 in 5 year crisis that might happen with it. And so there's an insurance aspect to it as well that causes companies quite often to look and say, you know what, if we could let somebody else take care of this for us, and they can do it on a service level basis, which is a distinguishing feature for us, I could come back to that, then they like to say that could be really good for us. And so.
And what is more important for companies today? I'm curious. Is it quick and accurate retrieval of information from their own files so they can use it in business, or keeping that secure from prying eyes on the outside?
Oh, wow. I think most companies are oriented toward optimizing their business to make sure everybody can get what they want, which is contrary to the way security would like to do it with least privilege. And so making sure you're blocking access.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah, that's what I mean, privacy versus efficiency.
And it's a line that we have to walk very carefully with our customers. They have to decide what are their business requirements. So the more you move, for example, toward financials, of course, the more they have governance standards that would impose very strict criteria on who could access what. On the other hand, there's a lot of pressure that comes with new technology to get in place very quickly for what I call the top 200. And so, when Apple came out with their new products, and everybody wanted to have an iPad,
of course.
Instructions came down saying, make it available, secure or not. So for people that are very important. Below, what that does is, of course, it shatters a lot of security requirements that were carefully built up. But on the other hand, the market is changing. And so a lot of companies perhaps have gone overboard, and they had to open things up a bit to become more efficient.
You mean overboard?
So it's a careful thing, weighing the risk on both sides. So what we're doing is applying the technology to be able to do that.
But isn't a lot of this done kind of on a wing and a prayer? I mean, people are just trusting the numbers. They realize, they say to themselves, well, yeah, things happen, but so what? They don't happen often. They won't happen to us. We'll take our chances. Until the day when they turn on the radio and it's their client list that has been hacked, or their employee list that has been hacked, or their bank account that has been hacked, then it's panic. But until then, it's all kind of on a wing and a prayer. They're just trusting the numbers blindly.
I guess so. If you think of it as a continuum, you have the agility on one end, and then the far end, and then you move over to governance, which is the way a lot of companies have tried to deal with the security around identities, which is what we do a lot of. And so they dealt with the governance, but governance doesn't secure you. Governance merely says that you're being responsible and you have systems, if you develop controls and you're meeting the objectives of those controls on a consistent basis. But it doesn't actually guarantee you that you've protected your data.
That's right.
So what's happening now when you see a lot of these cases where you have the theft of millions of credit cards, quite often it's actually happening in Active Directory. Somebody has got an account, they've got extra privileges, if you will. They go on, they find the information, they take the information, and they leave. Companies are looking and saying, wow, governance isn't actually protecting us. So now they're taking it to that next level and saying, wait a second, we need resilience. But that's so often it's the opposite of agility.
Yeah.
So we're trying to work with our customers. Yeah. Well, we believe that if you actually have a really, really good team in place that knows technology well, has very good processes and procedures, you can provide good agility and good resilience. It doesn't have to be compromised. It doesn't have to be a continuum, but it's very, very hard for an internal operational team to develop that. I think that you need, and we think what is necessary is, like us, a best of breed supplier that actually focuses on this and can actually maintain that balance.
And when it's an inside job, which is often suspected and turns out to be the case, and as you just pointed out, somebody has access, they have privileges, and they're not honest, and they sell that to a hacker, let's say, and the hacker gets in and gets his hands on it. When that happens, there's also the question of reaction time. How long before a breach like that is detected, typically, and companies react?
Wow. Well, one of the problems is, in fact, I heard the statistic recently, and I believe it was from the Gartner Group, and they said that very often a hacker has been dormant. So he's got credentials, he's been dormant for up to 7 months before he activates. And so the assumption should be made that somebody actually has an account on your network today, and they're just waiting to see, first of all, is it worthwhile? And secondly, when's the opportune moment to activate it?
That's incredible. That's scary.
And that can't be detected. I mean, and almost an awful lot of the time that merely comes through somebody sharing information that they shouldn't have. People are still the primary, leakage, if you will, for getting hold of an account or a password or
so it's
whatever information.
Training on the one side and punishment on the other.
Huge amount of training on one side. Yeah.
It's the old methods, really. There's no perfect technology. There's no bulletproof technology for this.
No, but you can't detect them until he activates. It's impossible because it's the user, it's the employee, it's the account that's sitting there, and they may even be using it. And so the only way you can actually detect is unusual patterns. And so we actually use technologies that come through both from Microsoft and partners that actually monitor, and based on algorithms and detecting unusual patterns, we can actually detect them earlier. That way, might not, hopefully you stop them before much damage is done. But almost always something has to be done before you can actually spot it, because they're using they're using the valid
they have to reveal
account
themselves.
of somebody on the company.
They have to tip their hand.
Exactly, they have to tip their hand. And so prevention is, a lot of it is about controlling how much damage is done.
And we were talking just a few minutes ago about the cloud, and you pointed up, which is logical. That's where the cloud is supposed to be. But again, one of your colleagues in IT was telling me, Bob, stop pointing and thinking it's a cloud. It's not a cloud. It's a server somewhere in Colorado that copies everything you've got, and it's not bulletproof either. And so I wonder if, before we start falling in love with the cloud, if we shouldn't be more aware of that. We're authorizing all these backups, but they're not bulletproof.
No, you are right. In the end, we used to, a lot of what's called cloud today, we called hosting just a few years ago.
Yeah.
And, so there's many definitions out there about what it means, but it really actually doesn't matter. So we can be working with all of your security internally. We can be working with it, on how that works together with the cloud. In the end, it's the same things that work, and you have to make sure that you've secured from one end to the other, that you know who has access to it, that you've got effective controls in place to make sure that you're comfortable and you can show to your customers that you took good care of their data, et cetera, et cetera. So, but you're right. In the end, it is the same thing sitting up there by massive providers.
Like Hillary Clinton's emails in Colorado. When that got on the news and people saw pictures of the building, it came as a shock. People had thought it was some super secure system somewhere secret, but it's a building in Colorado with a bunch of guys in it. I'm not saying they're not good or that they did anything wrong, but that's all it is, a building with a server.
Yeah, and that's, a lot of people have used the approach that, well, our data is just this tiny little speck way out there and nobody's going to find it. But I think she's an illustration where if it's really interesting, you will find it.
In the research on you, someone paid you a compliment, and I read that, and the person was saying, Ralph Loewen has great people skills, and his employees stay and they're loyal to him because he's a wonderful guy to work for, and so on. And I thought to myself, those people skills must be absolutely necessary, not just facing inward inside the company, but client facing, because when you implement Active Directory somewhere, you may be changing the whole company, the habits, and making people insecure. So how do you reassure people? Do you put a team in, a lot of personal contact? How does it work?
There, of course, has changed. So much can be done remotely today with some on-site, and so there's a back and forth. But a lot of our work today will be done remotely once we've gone onto site, worked out all the appropriate things, worked out accesses so we can do our work properly. But yeah, effectively, if we're going to go in and help a customer to optimize all of his technologies, we have to go in, with leading with a strong technical person who not only understands the technology, but we do long workshops with the customer to really understand their business processes, to understand their requirements, the security. And so we run a whole series of workshops. We take that data in. With that data, we then architect what we think would be the ideal, if you will, design for them at the end, how this should look. Once they sign off on that, then we can bring in people that would implement the change. And so that upfront work is really, really key. It takes 6 weeks, sometimes 12 weeks to do that on really large companies. A very small company would be very quick, of course. The smaller you get, the more you can go more to a cookie cutter. But most of our customers are quite large, and the systems have evolved over a long period of time. Active Directory has been around now for 15 years. And they become very, very complex. Nothing makes it more complex than a series of mergers and acquisitions.
I'm sure.